There are decisions that don't hurt right away, but when you wake up, it's already too late. Old age doesn't announce itself. It comes like a silent tide, forcing you to face who you were, what you gave, and what will never return. And in that moment, many people realize they lived for others but forgot about themselves. The truth is, after 60, there's no turning back. You can't redo the years you gave away or take back the words you never said. But you can still avoid the kind of regret that comes from not changing what you still have time to change. This video isn't comfort or a soft list of tips, it's a wake-up call. Because if you don't see this now, you could end up carrying a silence no one else can ease. Stay until the end. The final lesson might not just bring clarity, it could change how you live what remains. I'm Gabriel, and this space is called the Stoic Garden. We're not here to be entertained. We're here to reclaim the respect, clarity, and dignity that are rightfully yours. Have you ever mistaken your silence for peace, only to realize too late that you were actually giving your entire life away? Silence isn't always wisdom. Sometimes it's surrender. And at this stage, you can no longer afford to keep doing that. This is the first point in the video, and it's called Don't Mistake Silence for Peace. Learn to tell the difference between emotional exhaustion and true serenity. Because many people reach their 60s or 70s thinking they've found some kind of peace, when all they've really done is swallow their pain so they won't bother anyone. They pull back, lower their voice, stop asking for things, and call it maturity. But deep down, they know that calm isn't real. It's a fake pause to avoid conflict, a truce paid for with their own emotional health. Those around you might think you're fine because you don't complain, but they don't know how many nights you've gone to bed with your throat tight, how many times you've sat in front of a cup of coffee with no one to tell what's weighing on your heart. That peace people admire in you is sometimes just resignation in disguise. And if you don't face that resignation in time, it turns into the worst of habits, the habit of not feeling, not asking, not even claiming your right to live fully. There's a story I heard years ago that I've never been able to forget. A woman in her 70s once told me that her whole life she'd been the one who never said anything. Her mother raised her to believe that a good woman doesn't interrupt, keeps her thoughts to herself, and smiles even when her soul is breaking. She raised her children alone, cleaned houses for a living, supported a family that never once asked how she was doing. And when she finally reached old age, her house quiet, her body tired, she realized she didn't even know who she was. She told me with a painful clarity, I confused respect for others with forgetting myself, and now I barely have a voice left to speak up. Stoicism doesn't ask you to silence your pain. It asks you to face it, to name it, and to decide what to do with it. Marcus Aurelius said, "True peace isn't the absence of problems. It's having a mind trained to face them. But that mind needs to be awake. And to wake it up, you have to stop numbing yourself with phrases like, 'It's not worth it,' 'I'd rather not say anything,' 'I don't want to argue anymore.' Because every time you choose silence to avoid discomfort, you're giving more power to the emotional erosion that's stealing your life piece by piece. God didn't bring you this far for you to spend your final days in an emotional corner, watching life pass you by as if it no longer belongs to you. Faith is not resignation. True faith is having the courage to say, enough, even if your voice trembles. It's understanding that your soul wasn't made to bury eternal truths, but to live them with dignity. If someone walks away because you finally chose to speak up, they were never truly with you. But if you walk away from your own truth out of fear of conflict, the price will be your inner peace. And believe me, that's far too precious to keep bargaining with. This isn't a time to keep hiding behind learned silences. It's a time to firmly ask yourself, is what I'm calling peace really peace, or just the result of staying quiet for too long? If the answer unsettles you, don't ignore it. That discomfort is your soul asking you to listen before it's too late. Silence isn't always wisdom, and deep down you know that. But there's another kind of silence, a subtler one, that can also ruin your life if you don't face it in time. It's the moment you stop listening to your own body, not because you want to ignore it, but because you're tired of being reminded again and again of what you can no longer do. But that fatigue can become betrayal if you start seeing your body as a burden instead of what it truly is, your last territory of freedom. We've reached the second key point in this video, and it's called "Your body is not a burden or a punishment. It's your last territory of freedom." And it's urgent that we face it with the raw honesty it deserves. Because many people, as they age, start speaking about their bodies as if they were the enemy. My knees are useless. I can't keep up like I used to. My body is failing me. Words like these aren't just phrases. They're seeds of resentment planted against yourself. And every time you repeat them, you move a little further away from the chance to live with dignity. I get it. It's not easy to wake up in pain. It's not easy to watch your skin change, your muscles weaken, your steps slow down. But the problem isn't your body. The problem is how you judge it. From a Stoic perspective, the body is a tool, not the source of your worth. Epictetus said we should care for what we've been given, but never become slaves to it. And caring doesn't mean demanding perfection. It means honoring it as the space where your consciousness lives. Your body isn't betraying you. It's speaking to you. Every ache, every limit, every sign is its way of saying, "Listen to me, don't neglect me, don't abandon me." But instead of listening, many people pull away even more. They stop moving, stop breathing deeply, stop touching themselves with respect. They start living as if their body was something shameful, a mistake, a weight they're forced to carry. And that's when aging becomes a prison, not because of what's missing, but because of what's no longer celebrated. This problem goes deeper than the physical. It's also spiritual. Because there's a wound many women carry from a young age, the wound of having put their bodies in service of others. Children, partners, jobs, always serving, always giving, rarely listened to or respected. And now, when they could finally inhabit their body for themselves, they find it broken, tired, and feel it's no longer worth caring for. But that's not true. That thought is just the echo of years of neglect, not a final verdict. When you reconcile with your body, something in your soul begins to heal too. You don't need to get back what's already gone. You just need to make peace with what's still possible. A slow walk, a conscious breath, a gentle stretch, a meal chosen with love, a well-earned rest. These small acts are sacred gestures, not to please anyone, not to fit an ideal, but to remind yourself that you're still alive, still capable of feeling, still able to be grateful for this body that, despite everything it's endured, still holds you up. The body is the only home you can't leave, and if you don't inhabit it with respect, you end up a sad visitor within yourself. That's why this point isn't about looks or performance. It's about dignity, about restoring the connection with what you are at your core, an embodied consciousness, a spirit that still has something to say, something to experience, something to enjoy. Don't let physical decline become an excuse to give up. Don't surrender what can still be transformed with tenderness. You still have time to see your body for what it truly is. A temple, maybe with cracks, maybe with scars, but still sacred, still yours, still worthy of being loved. You've seen that your body isn't a ruin, but a temple still worthy of care. But the respect you need to give yourself doesn't stop at the physical. There's another form of wear, quieter and even more destructive: emotional exhaustion. Because a life given without limits, if not accompanied by awareness, can leave you empty. And that brings us to the third point in this video, perhaps one of the hardest to accept. You don't owe anything for having loved. Stop paying with your life for what others already took. This is a delicate point, because many people, especially women, were raised to believe that true love means sacrifice, and they sacrificed time, dreams, health, body, voice. They gave everything, and even now, some are still waiting for a bit of gratitude that never came. Children who grew up demanding without appreciating, partners who expected without listening, family members who only showed up to ask, never to support. And yet you're still there, responding, fixing, worrying, as if you still owed something. But let me say it plainly, loving doesn't make you a debtor. Giving doesn't make you an emotional servant. Stoicism teaches us that virtue lies in right action, not in controlling how others respond. Seneca put it clearly, "Do good for the sake of doing good, not for the applause that might follow." But there's a difference between acting with virtue and allowing that virtue to become an excuse for others to never take responsibility for themselves. This is where a powerful shift can happen. Stop justifying emotional abuse just because you once loved the person causing it. Stop accepting less than you deserve just because you remember all you gave. It's time to set boundaries, not as punishment, but as a reminder that your life matters too. And how do you do that? With one simple question that could start a new chapter. Would I still be doing this for this person if I didn't feel guilty? If the answer is no, then you're not acting out of love, but out of debt. And if that debt isn't real, if no one justly placed it on you, then it's a prison you can choose to tear down. Setting this boundary isn't selfish, it's inner justice. It's giving yourself the place you denied for years so others could stay at the center. It's living from self-respect, not from the need to be needed. Think of an emotional bank account. You've made deposits for decades. Love, time, effort, care. But if every time you need something, the balance is zero, then you're not in a relationship. You're in an arrangement sustained by habit. And that cycle ends the moment you decide to face facts instead of excuses. When you stop explaining the unexplainable and start acting with the resolve of someone no longer willing to lose herself just to keep someone else. If any of this resonates with you, if you're starting to see more clearly what you deserve and what you can no longer tolerate, I invite you to subscribe and like this video. That way, I'll know you're not here for entertainment, but for direction. And if you want, tell me in the comments which country you're listening from and write the phrase, "My love doesn't make me a debtor." Because that's who you are, a woman who loved, who gave, who carried the weight, but who no longer needs to keep paying with her life for what others failed to care for. Stay with me. There are still important lessons ahead that can help you bring order to the chaos others left behind. And believe me, the last one might forever change how you understand your story. You've made it this far. You already know that loving doesn't make you a debtor. But there's an even quieter idea that can still sabotage your freedom, even when you think you're making progress. It's that inner voice that says, "I'll do it later." When things calm down, the right time will come. And the danger is, it sounds reasonable, almost serene. But behind those phrases, what often hides is fear. Fear of change, fear of letting go of the familiar, fear of claiming the place you deserve. That's why we've reached the fourth point in this video. You don't need more time, you need direction, how to stop waiting for a perfect moment that will never come. This trap is one of the most common in adult life, especially after 55. You've already lived so much, seen so much, that you start telling yourself it's better to wait. Wait for your children to change. Wait for your health to improve. Wait until you have more energy, more money, more clarity. But the truth, as hard as it is to accept, is that the better moment you're imagining doesn't exist. It's not coming, not in the exact way you're hoping. And while you postpone your awakening, life doesn't stop. It slips away. It fades into routines that no longer mean anything, into silences that numb you, into years that pass without leaving a mark. This mistake is so destructive because it settles in quietly. It doesn't arrive with alarms or warnings. It disguises itself as caution, patience, wisdom. But if you look at it honestly, you'll see that you're not really being patient. You're stuck. And that paralysis is stealing the most precious thing you have at this stage, your ability to choose. Stoicism teaches that the only thing that truly belongs to you is your will, your power to choose in the present. And if you give that away to some imagined future, you're stripping yourself of your own life without anyone needing to ask it of you. The consequences of living in waiting are deep. First, you lose the urgency to act. Then, you lose faith that your life can change. And finally, you lose the sense that you deserve something different. You get used to gray, to the tolerable, to what doesn't hurt too much but doesn't bring joy either. And that zone of neutrality is the perfect ground for the soul to go quiet without making a sound. Because when you don't do anything with what you feel, you end up feeling less and less. Not because you're at peace, but because you're numb. You don't need more time. The time you have is this moment, the one you're living while hearing these words. What you do need is direction. And direction doesn't appear out of thin air. It's built from a decision. Even if it's not perfect, even if you don't know what comes next, even if your whole system shakes when you finally say, "I'm not going to keep waiting." Because sometimes, one small choice is enough to change the course of an entire life. A walk you weren't taking, a call you kept postponing, a no you never dared to say. That is direction. That is life in motion. And at this point, if you don't start moving, no one will do it for you. The soul doesn't need promises. It needs action. And every act you take today, no matter how small, is a reminder that there's still time. Not to do everything perfectly, but to make it real. Because the moment you're waiting for won't show up wrapped in certainty. It will come the moment you decide you can't keep putting yourself off. And that moment, if you choose it now, could be the beginning of everything you thought was lost. We're stepping into one of the most painful parts of this journey. We've already talked about the body, about time, about love, misunderstood. But there's something even more destructive than all those forms of wear combined, the habit of begging for attention. We've reached the 5th point in this video, and it's called, "If they don't listen, they don't deserve you. Break the cycle of begging for attention." And yes, I said begging, because that's exactly what it is when you keep calling someone who doesn't answer, when you keep opening up to someone who doesn't see you, when you keep trying to hold together relationships that no longer show you respect. It's begging, not for love, not for affection, but for respect. The consequences of this are deeper than they seem, because you don't just lose energy, you lose dignity, and the most dangerous part is that it starts gradually. A son who only shows up when he needs something. A friend who comes to unload her pain but never asks how you're doing. A partner who stopped listening long ago, yet you keep talking as if one day they might wake up. At first, you tell yourself it's normal, that people have their problems, that they can't always be there. But one day, you realize you're always there, and they never are. And without noticing it, you've become a functional presence. You're there, but you don't count. You're there, but you have no influence. You're there, but you don't matter. And that's not a relationship, it's emotional servitude. Staying in that cycle leads to the saddest part of all. You begin to question your own worth. You wonder if you expect too much, if you're being a burden, if it's your fault they don't call, don't listen, don't include you. And that's where self-betrayal begins. Because instead of walking away from those who hurt you, you walk away from your own judgment. Instead of setting boundaries, you make excuses. Instead of demanding respect, you lower your voice to avoid discomfort. But all of that comes at a price. Your peace, your self-esteem, your ability to see yourself as someone who matters. And when you lose that, no amount of company can make up for it. Now this situation can be reversed, but not with sweet words or quick advice. It's reversed with a decision that hurts, but frees you. Stop insisting where you've already been ignored too many times. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about reminding yourself that your time, your attention, your presence are gifts. And if someone doesn't value them, they don't deserve to keep receiving them. It doesn't matter if they're family. It doesn't matter if there's shared history. Respect isn't inherited. It's demonstrated. And if there's no respect, there's no foundation to build on. The mindset you need isn't revenge or bitterness. It's clarity. It's telling yourself with a steady voice, I can't keep investing my soul in relationships that are draining it. It's understanding that love doesn't mean enduring, that support doesn't mean disappearing, that being available doesn't mean being unprotected. Sometimes, real love means closing the door with a broken heart, because you know staying open will only leave you in ruins. I know it's not easy. I know there's fear. Fear of ending up alone, fear that no one else will come, fear that absence might weigh more than a hollow presence. But let me tell you something I've seen again and again. When you stop begging for attention, something new begins to show up. Not always right away, not always from who you expected, but it does appear. And when it does, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't drain, it doesn't degrade. It's real company. A presence that sees you, hears you, honors you. But that can't arrive unless you first make the cut. Because if you stay tied to what doesn't value you, there's no room for what does. Stop explaining yourself. Stop justifying. Stop waiting. Your voice deserves to be heard without having to shout. Your presence deserves to be cherished without having to beg. And if that's not happening, then they're not loving you, they're using you. And you're no longer at a point in life where you can afford to give away what's taken you so much to build. After letting go of the habit of begging for attention, an emptiness remains. A new silence that feels frightening. But it might also be the doorway to your true freedom. The problem is that many people, when they reach that point, don't know what to do with the silence. They just sit there, staring at what they've lost, unsure how to start again. And that's the most dangerous moment, because if you don't fill that space with truth, you'll fill it with fear. And fear, when left unchecked, disguises itself as strength. It convinces you that being quiet is being strong, that not crying is maturity, that feeling nothing is peace. But that's not peace. It's emotional blockage. It's a soul weighed down, no longer knowing how to breathe. We've reached the 6th point in this video, and it's called Being Strong Isn't About Staying Silent. How to release the old tears you're still carrying. I'm not here to talk about soft resilience or throw empty motivational quotes at you. I'm here to say what many don't want to hear. There are griefs you never faced, words you never said, wounds you never closed, and you're carrying all of that in the form of physical pain, insomnia, anxiety, and a sadness that now feels like part of your personality. But it's not. That sadness has a name. It has a story. It holds tears that never came out because someone convinced you that showing pain was weakness. Now imagine this. You're alone in your room, it's nighttime, and in the stillness, you feel a weight in your chest. It's not an illness, it's memory, it's accumulation. It's the result of decades of not crying when you should have, of not screaming when you needed to, of not writing down what was suffocating you. And then you tell yourself, I'm too old for this. But what you're really saying is, I've gotten so used to pain. I no longer allow myself to let it go. Stoicism doesn't ask you to repress, it asks you to observe without drama and act with truth. And if the truth is that you're broken inside, then your first act of wisdom isn't to hold it in. It's to cry properly, to cry without guilt, to cry without hiding, because those tears aren't weakness, they're cleansing. They're how the soul exhales what the mind couldn't solve. And if you don't let them out, you'll stay trapped in armor that may protect you, but also keeps you from feeling. And a life without feeling is nothing more than daily survival that does no justice to your story. Picture your soul like an old house, full of locked rooms, forgotten objects, dusty portraits. If you don't open the windows, if you don't clear out what hurts, the air turns heavy. The space becomes unlivable. And there you are, walking through hallways that no longer represent you. Is that really all that's left? A body in pain, a routine that drains you, and a soul too scared to cry? No, that can't be all. But if you don't make a decision, that's exactly what you'll keep living. This isn't about being dramatic. It's about being honest. Because a woman who dares to cry what she's been holding back is a woman who's starting to wake up. Sometimes, just one afternoon of honest tears can bring back years of clarity. I don't say that lightly, I've seen it happen. And the hardest part isn't seeing someone cry. It's realizing how long it's been since anyone asked if she needed to. Today, that question is right in front of you. How many old tears are you carrying in silence? If you don't let them out, they will break you. Maybe not all at once, but slowly, from the inside. And there's no greater betrayal than breaking because you couldn't cry when you needed to. You still have time, but only if you stop pretending to be strong and start being honest. Because real strength isn't resisting what hurts, it's having the courage to feel it and then let it go. After crying the tears no one ever saw, after letting go of what was never appreciated, something deeper remains, something you still have to face, the meaning of your story. Because you can do all the healing, all the letting go, and still feel empty if you haven't found a real reason to keep living with intention. It's not enough to heal wounds or cut ties. You have to redraw your life from the truth, even if it hurts. And that brings us to the seventh and most defining point of this video. Your story is still being written. How to give a worthy ending to what others failed to value. Many people reach this stage with the feeling that everything has already been said, that there's nothing left to prove, that what's been lived is enough, that all that's left is to wait. But that's not maturity, it's disguised resignation. Because as long as you're alive, your story is still unfolding. And if you don't decide how to write this final chapter, someone else will write it for you. Fear, routine, guilt, the opinions of others. This moment isn't for spectators, it's for authors, and that means accepting that the closing of your life isn't in anyone else's hands. It's in what you choose to do with what you still have. It's easy to blame your children, your past, your circumstances, but there comes a point where continuing to blame only keeps you stuck. Maybe no one valued your efforts. Maybe you spent decades without anyone asking how you were. Maybe you gave more than you received. Yes, all of that may be true, but it can't be your banner anymore. Because if you keep repeating what wasn't, you're keeping yourself from building what could still be. Taking responsibility for your story doesn't mean denying the pain, it means refusing to let the pain have the final word. Your transformation begins when you stop waiting for recognition and start giving yourself direction. When you stop thinking it's too late and start acting like every day matters. Because it does. Every word you choose, every person you allow into your life, every habit you repeat, each one is shaping the end of your story. And that ending can be a regret or a declaration, a shadow or a flame. It doesn't depend on how many years you have left. It depends on the awareness with which you live each one. Stoicism doesn't promise happiness, it promises inner freedom. And that freedom only comes when you stop begging for meaning out there and begin cultivating it within. Maybe no one gave you the life you deserved, but you can still give yourself a death that honors your dignity, not in a tragic sense, but in a profound one. To die, having been truly yourself, not a version broken by others' expectations. To die having said what you once kept silent, having loved with clarity, having forgiven without giving in, having made choices that reflect who you are. That is a worthy ending, not one that earns applause, but one that lets you look back without lowering your gaze. Right now, you are exactly at the point where you can still choose. Maybe this is the last time someone will remind you of it so clearly. What you do with these words won't just shape your tomorrow, it will shape the story you leave behind when you're no longer here. And that story, even if no one reads it, even if there are no tributes or applause, will be your truest legacy, the most undeniable one, the one only you can choose how to finish. Something inside you understands now that you can't keep postponing decisions, that your story needs order, clarity, and direction, and that responsibility can't be left in someone else's hands. What you heard today isn't comfort. It's not fleeting motivation. It's a direct confrontation with what many choose to avoid. Because facing what hurts, what's missing, what can no longer be repeated, takes a kind of courage that can't be taught, but it can be awakened. And if you're here, at the end of this journey, it's because that courage is still alive in you. Maybe bruised, maybe quiet, but alive. Not everyone stays until the end. Not everyone can sit with this kind of raw truth. But you did. And that says more about you than any degree, any life story, or any past sacrifice. It says you're still willing to wake up, to live with your head held high, even if no one walks beside you. That's why I want to ask you for something specific. Go to the comments and write the phrase, "My story still belongs to me." Include the country you're listening from, because I want to know where these words are resonating and who the women are that have chosen not to give up. I'm Gabriel, and this space is called the Stoic Garden. Not to entertain, not to sugarcoat reality. This channel exists because older women have been invisible for far too long. Women who deserve a strong voice, a gaze free of pity, and content that truly respects them. There are no sweet speeches here, only direction. Because at this stage, the soul doesn't ask for applause, it asks for truth. I invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. Not for numbers, but for conviction. Because everyone who joins this space becomes part of a community that has decided to reclaim their respect, their time, and their autonomy. And if you know someone who needs to stop waiting, who needs to hear this even if it hurts, share it. Not as a favor, as an act of loyalty. The conversation doesn't end here. I've left 2 more videos on the screen. Choose the one that speaks to you, not out of curiosity, but out of commitment. Because every word you hear here has one clear purpose: to help you live the years ahead, not as a shadow of who you were, but as the full author of who you can still become.